sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Picture this. You're enjoying a quiet Sunday, in a retirement community.
Yeah.
Maybe you're relaxing on the porch, having some lemonade.
Right.
And then out of nowhere, a plane crashes right in the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
That's what we're going to be taking a look at today.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a crazy story that actually happened.
Oh, wow.
It happened on March 9th, 2025 at a place called Brethren Village.
Okay.
It's in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And we found this in a Fox News article.
Oh, interesting.
And, it's not every day that you hear about a plane crash in a place where people are supposed to be, relaxing and enjoying their retirement.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to really break down what happened,
Okay.
why it's so important, and what it means for how we think about, safety and risk.
It definitely makes you rethink where danger can be lurking, right?
Yeah.
We usually think about plane crashes happening at airports or in remote areas, not really a place where people go to enjoy their golden years. Exactly. So let's look at the details.
Okay.
The article says that a Beechcraft Bonanza with 5 people on board crashed just a few moments after taking off from the Lancaster Airport, which is nearby.
Okay.
Witnesses said it crashed 30 seconds after takeoff.
Wow.
What do you think that tells us about what might have gone wrong?
Well, when you think about it, 30 seconds is not a lot of time at all.
Right.
It makes you think that something went seriously wrong almost as soon as the plane left the ground.
Right.
To give you some perspective, statistically, you're way more likely to get in a car accident than a plane crash.
Right.
The National Transportation Safety Board, they report about 1,000 general aviation accidents each year on average. And only a very small number of those happen so close to takeoff.
Right.
So this is definitely a very unusual incident.
That really puts things in perspective, and it definitely emphasizes how unusual this whole event is.
Yeah.
The article also talks about this witness named Joseph Smith.
Oh. He lives in Lititz, and he saw the plane go down.
Wow.
And he even mentioned this really strong smell of fuel in the air.
Oh, gosh.
There are also some pretty intense photos in the article. One shows the wreckage with emergency responders all around it.
Oh.
And another one shows all this thick black smoke billowing from the crash site.
It must have been pretty shocking to see.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. The fact that he could smell the fuel just paints a really vivid picture.
Right.
It's one thing to read about a crash in an article.
Right.
But to imagine that strong smell in the air makes it all too real.
It really does. And it makes me think about all the people living at Brethren Village. This is a place meant for peace and quiet.
Right.
A place where people expect to live out their days in tranquility.
Right.
To suddenly have a plane crash in their backyard.
Yeah.
That must have been incredibly shocking.
You can't even imagine all the emotions they must have gone through.
Right.
The shock, the fear, probably disbelief, maybe even feeling vulnerable. It definitely makes you question where you're truly safe.
Yeah.
And shows just how unpredictable life can be.
You mentioned something earlier about the National Transportation Safety Board investigating these types of incidents.
Yes.
Can you walk us through what that looks like and what they'll be focusing on in this case?
Yeah, so whenever there's an aviation accident, the NTSB, they jump right in to do a thorough investigation.
Okay.
They'll look over the wreckage really carefully, interview witnesses like Mr. Smith,
Right.
and they'll analyze any flight data they can get.
So when you say flight data, you don't just mean the black box.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because this type of plane might not even have one.
Okay.
We're talking about radar data recordings of communications.
Got it.
And even data from personal devices if they were being used at the time.
So they're basically piecing together a puzzle using all sorts of information.
Exactly.
What are some of the puzzle pieces they might be looking for in this case?
Okay.
What usually causes these small plane crashes?
Well, there are a few usual suspects. Pilot error is always a possibility. Right. But we don't have any information about the pilot's experience yet or anything that might have contributed to the crash.
Okay.
Mechanical failure is another big one.
Okay.
And with a Beechcraft Bonanza, you're dealing with a single-engine aircraft.
Right.
So any problem with that engine could lead to a really bad situation.
Right.
They'll be checking the engine and all the plane's systems
Right.
for any signs of a breakdown or malfunction.
I would imagine weather conditions could also play a role.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with smaller planes.
Weather is a huge factor in aviation.
Yeah.
Especially for smaller planes that are more sensitive to wind gusts and turbulence.
Right.
They'll definitely be looking at the weather reports from when the crash happened to see if the weather could have been a factor. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, so it's not likely they were dealing with a major storm.
Right.
But even what seems like calm weather can affect how a small plane flies.
So it sounds like the investigators have a lot to figure out.
Yeah.
It's a complex process, and it could take a while before we know for sure what caused this crash.
These investigations can take months or even years to complete.
Wow.
But the NTSB is extremely thorough.
Yeah.
Their goal is to learn as much as possible from every single incident to prevent similar tragedies.
And speaking of preventing tragedies, this incident also makes you think about emergency preparedness.
Yeah.
Especially in communities like Brethren Village.
Right.
Are they equipped to handle something like this?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And one that many communities might be rethinking now because of this incident. You know, do they have good emergency plans in place?
Right.
Are residents trained in basic first aid or disaster response?
All those things become much more real when something like this happens in your own backyard.
Exactly. This isn't just some hypothetical scenario anymore.
Right.
It's a real wake-up call that even in places that seem safe and secluded, the unexpected can happen.
It makes you wonder, are we doing enough to prepare ourselves and our communities for these types of events?
It's a question worth asking.
That's a really thought-provoking question, and one we'll keep exploring as we dig deeper into this incident.
Okay.
We've already covered a lot. The rarity of this happening, the potential causes, the impact on the residents, and the broader questions it raises about safety and preparedness.
Right.
But there's definitely more to uncover.
Absolutely. It's a question that really goes beyond just this one incident.
It does feel like we're talking about something much bigger here.
Right. It kind of makes you think about how we look at risk in general.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to focus on the most obvious threats or the ones that are statistically more likely to happen. But maybe we need to think more broadly and consider those what-if scenarios.
Right.
Even the ones that seem super unlikely.
Like a plane crashing into a retirement community.
Exactly. And it's not about living in fear or being overly cautious.
Right.
It's more about understanding that unexpected things can happen. And that awareness can help us be more prepared, not just for plane crashes, but for anything that we might not see coming.
That's a really good point. It's not about getting rid of risk entirely,
right,
but about understanding it better and having plans in place to deal with it.
Exactly.
I know we don't have a lot of details about how the residents reacted.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking about what it must have been like for them to see something so crazy and unexpected.
Right.
Did they try to help? Were they frozen in fear?
It's tough to say for sure.
Yeah.
But there are probably a lot of different reactions. Some people might have instinctively jumped in to help.
Right.
While others might have been completely stunned and unable to move.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong way to react in a situation like that.
Right.
Everyone processes trauma differently.
That's true. And I can imagine that the emotional and psychological impact of something like this could last long after the wreckage is gone and things seem to be back to normal.
Absolutely. Trauma can affect people in so many ways. And it's important to remember that even if there were any physical injuries, the psychological effects can be serious and long-lasting.
Yeah.
This really highlights the need for mental health support and resources.
Right.
Especially after a traumatic event like this.
So it's not just about taking care of immediate needs.
Yeah.
It's also about giving ongoing support to help people and the community as a whole to process what happened and heal.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that recovering from trauma is a journey, and it can take time and support to get through it.
Shifting gears a bit, this incident also got me thinking about the role of technology in our lives.
Okay.
On one hand, we have these incredible advancements like airplanes that let us do amazing things.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's still machines. They're complex, and they can be affected by human error.
Yeah.
It's like this constant push and pull between our desire to be in control and the fact that the world around us is inherently unpredictable.
You've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah.
It reminds us that even as we make technological progress, there's always some level of risk involved.
Right.
And events like this force us to face the reality that technology isn't perfect.
Right.
It can fail. And when it does, the consequences can be really serious.
It's almost like a paradox. We rely on technology to make our lives safer and easier.
Yes.
But that same technology can also create new vulnerabilities and potential dangers.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And one that we're constantly trying to figure out as a society. And I think incidents like this plane crash can push us to reevaluate that balance and ask some tough questions about how we design and manage our communities, especially as our population gets older and we need more safe and supportive environment.
Do you explain that a little more? What do you mean by how we design and manage our communities?
Sure. As we saw in this incident, even a seemingly peaceful place like a retirement community can suddenly become the scene of an unexpected crisis.
This raises a really important question. Are we preparing our communities well enough? Not just for the everyday things, but for the possibility of these kinds of events.
That's a really interesting point. What are some things we should be considering?
Well, for starters, we need to think about the physical infrastructure of our communities.
Okay.
Are there good emergency response systems in place?
Right.
Are evacuation routes clearly marked and easy to access? Are buildings designed with safety in mind?
It sounds like you're saying we need to think beyond just how things look and the amenities.
Yes.
And really focus on how well our communities function and how resilient they are.
Exactly.
Especially those designed for people who are more vulnerable.
You got it. And it's not just about the physical environment.
Right.
It's also about the social and community support systems. Do residents have access to mental health resources?
Right.
Are there programs that help people connect with each other and feel like they belong?
Because those social connections can be so important during a crisis.
Absolutely. When people feel connected to their community and supported by their neighbors, they're more likely to handle stress and trauma effectively. It's about creating a sense of collective resilience, where everyone feels empowered to look out for each other.
So it's not just about building stronger buildings, it's about building stronger communities.
Exactly. And that requires a shift in how we think, from focusing on individual needs to recognizing that we're all connected, and that our well-being as a whole depends on our ability to support one another.
That's a powerful message. And it applies to so much more than just this one incident.
Yeah.
It seems like we've come full circle back to the idea that while we can try to control things, life is unpredictable.
It is.
And maybe the best way to deal with that uncertainty is to build community resilience and compassion.
Yeah.
Those are qualities that can help us get through any tough situation.
That's beautifully said. Thank you. It's not about downplaying the tragedy or the possibility of harm, but about recognizing that even in the darkest moments, there's often a glimmer of hope, a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure, to adapt, and to find meaning even in the midst of chaos.
And maybe that's the most important thing we can take away from this deep dive.
Yeah.
That while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can choose how we respond. And in doing so, we can find strength, resilience, and a deeper appreciation for life itself.
What a profound thought.
Thank you.
And one that I think really captures the essence of what we've been talking about.
This conversation has been incredibly insightful.
It has.
As we move into the last part of our deep dive,
okay,
I'm curious to explore the role of technology in a bit more detail. You mentioned before that technology, while beneficial, also brings new challenges and weaknesses.
That's right. And this incident really highlights that tension. You know, we have this marvel of engineering crashing into a retirement community, a place where technology might not seem as prominent in daily life. It's a stark reminder of how connected everything is. Even in areas where technology isn't as visible, we're still impacted by its advancements and the potential risks that come with them.
It makes you wonder about the balance between progress and risk.
Yeah.
How can we keep innovating and pushing the boundaries of what's possible while also making sure we're mitigating the risks that are always there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's no easy answer.
Right.
It requires a multifaceted approach with strict safety regulations, continuous evaluation of existing systems, and a willingness to learn from incidents like this one. The NTSB investigation will be key in figuring out if any technological failures or malfunctions played a part in this crash.
I imagine they'll be looking very closely at the aircraft systems.
Oh, absolutely.
Trying to understand why it went down so quickly after takeoff.
Yeah.
Is there anything specific about the Beechcraft Bonanza that might make it more prone to these types of catastrophic failures?
Well, it's worth noting that the Beechcraft Bonanza actually has a pretty good safety record overall.
Okay.
It's been around for decades, and it's a common aircraft for both personal and business use.
Right.
However, it is a single-engine plane,
Right.
which means if the engine fails, the pilot has very limited options.
That makes sense.
They'll definitely be examining the engine for signs of mechanical issues.
Okay.
But they'll also be checking the plane's control systems, fuel system,
Right.
and any other parts that could have contributed to the crash.
So they're really looking at the whole picture, not just the engine itself.
Exactly. They're trying to figure out if there was a series of events that led up to the crash.
Okay.
Was there an initial failure that set off a chain reaction of other problems?
Right.
Did any of the safety systems fail to work properly? These are the kinds of questions they'll be trying to answer.
And that information will be so important in preventing similar accidents from happening again.
Exactly.
It's almost like they're using this tragedy as a way to learn and improve aviation safety for everyone.
That's absolutely the goal. Every aviation accident, no matter how minor,
Right.
is a chance to learn and make things better. The NTSB takes this responsibility incredibly seriously. They'll analyze every bit of data, interview every witness,
Wow.
and test every theory they have to understand what went wrong and how we can stop it from happening in the future.
It's this ongoing cycle of learning and improvement, isn't it?
It is, and it involves everyone working together, engineers, regulators, pilots, and the public.
Right.
We all have a part to play in ensuring that technology serves us in a safe and effective way.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm struck by how much there is to consider
Yeah.
in what initially seemed like a pretty straightforward event.
Yeah.
We've talked about the human impact, the technological aspects, the broader societal implications, and even the philosophical questions about safety control and our relationship with technology.
It's often the case, isn't it? What might seem simple at first glance can actually reveal a whole network of interconnected issues, challenges, and opportunities when you really look at it.
And maybe that's the power of doing a deep dive like this.
I think so.
We get to peel back the layers,
Yeah,
ask those tough questions, and come away with a more nuanced understanding of the world around us.
absolutely. If there's one thing I want our listeners to remember from this deep dive, is that even when we face unexpected and sometimes tragic events,
Right.
there's always something to be learned, something to reflect on, something to discuss.
That's a great point. It's a good reminder that learning and understanding is a journey, not a destination.
Well said.
So until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have the ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a puppy dog. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.